Are you familiar with the Department of Justice report that came out last week?
I'm aware of it. I'm not familiar with it.
Have you read it?
I have not.
Have you read portions of it?
I have not.
In the complaint in this case, paragraph 33 of the complaint, amended complaint filed herein October 1, 2020, states, and the plaintiffs allege in paragraph 33, prior to November 7, 2019, Defendant Conrad had actual knowledge of LMPD officers violating the civil, constitutional, and human rights of numerous citizens, including violations via the unlawful and improper use of force, which officers Conrad refused to discipline. By refusing to discipline the officers for violating the citizens' rights as aforementioned, Conrad created and fostered an atmosphere at LMPD wherein the violation of citizens' rights was acceptable and in fact encouraged and became the norm. And the Department of Justice, first of all, I guess let me break that down and see what parts of that you disagree with. Would you agree that there were officers prior to November 7, 2019 who had violated the civil, constitutional, or human rights of citizens in Jefferson County?
Objection form, you can answer.
It may have occurred.
Would you agree that you had actual knowledge of some of those instances where LMPD officers violated constitutional rights of citizens in Louisville?
Objection form, you can answer.
Not that I'm aware of, and if I was aware of them, we should have taken action to address it from a disciplinary point of view.
So if there were constitutional right violations prior to November 7 of 2019 on your watch at LMPD, you did not know of any specific instances. Is that
Correct.
fair?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But you are in agreement that if it comes to the attention of LMPD that an officer has violated someone's constitutional rights, that needs to be addressed from a disciplinary standpoint.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm going to refer to a previous case. Amanda Carver and Amanda Price, Gary Carver and Amanda Price versus Louisville, Jefferson County, Louisville Metro Government et al., including officers Charles Meek and Michael Trevino. Do you recall that case?
No.
You were a party to that case, and in June 19, 2014, Judge Hayburn wrote a summary judgment order, which in part, for your perspective, released you from that lawsuit. It was ordered that the defendant's motion for summary judgment was sustained in part, and the following claims were dismissed, including all claims against Conrad and Burks, all the claims against Louisville Metro Government and Louisville Metro Police. The summary judgment motion was denied with respect to all of Gary Carver's claims against Meek and Trevino, and Amanda Price's claim against Meek for unlawful search and seizure. In that order, which relieved you of any responsibility in that case, Judge Hayburn specifically found on page 1 of the memorandum opinion and order, 4th full paragraph. The main problem with defendant's claims for summary judgment arise with the claims against Meek, Officer Charles Meek. The objective evidence contradicts much of his deposition testimony and could lead a reasonable jury to completely disbelieve him. Do you know who Charles Meek is?
I do not. I recognize the name, but I don't know him.
This stems from an incident in wherein Gary Carver was approached by Charles Meek and Michael Trevino. Both officers testified in a district court hearing in front of Judge Katie King, and they testified that Carver began yelling obscenities as they approached him. A digital audio tape of that incident was recorded by Carver and revealed that those statements by those officers were untrue, that they had lied about Carver screaming obscenities as they approached. And Louisville Metro paid out $96,000 for the stop and frisk and false arrest of Gary Carver. Do you know if anything disciplinary-wise happened to Charles Meek or Michael Trevino as a result of that incident?
Objection to form. You can answer if you know.
I don't know. I would assume that would have been shared with the professional standards unit, and an investigation would have happened, but I don't know that.
Okay. Who all can initiate one of those investigations?
A professional standards can be, which would be an internal investigation, could be initiated by any person who files an affidavit alleging misconduct on the part of an officer, or it can be initiated based on a order from the chief.
What about a PIU investigation?
A public integrity unit investigation is a criminal investigation, and it does not require initiation on the part of the chief or anyone. It's essentially a follow-up on some sort of potential investigation involving a member of the department, or in some cases, other members of Metro government.
Okay. But you would agree in a case like this that we're talking about, Gary Carver versus Charles Meek and Michael Trevino, that based on the outcome of that case and this memorandum of opinion from Judge Haburn, there should have been some sort of disciplinary action initiated against Charles Meek and Michael Trevino.
Objection to form. You can answer.
And I think I had said as much before. That would have, in my mind, resulted in some sort of a follow-up investigation and the potential for discipline.
Okay. And ultimately, you would have been the one who is responsible for implementing training and supervising on the standard operating procedures.
Yes, sir, I was responsible for those duties, albeit them delegated to other people in the department to make that happen, but it was ultimately my responsibility.
Okay. Regarding the Department of Justice investigation, would you agree that within the time span where you were chief at Louisville Metro Police, LMPD used excessive force, including unjustified neck restraints and unreasonable use of police dogs and tasers?
Objection to form. You can answer if you know.
I'm sure that there were times when that occurred.
Would you agree that LMPD conducted search warrants based on invalid warrants?
Objection to form. You can answer if you know.
I don't know, but if it's in there, I assume it happened.
Would you agree that LMPD unlawfully executed search warrants without knocking and announcing?
Objection to form. You can answer if you know.
I'm sure there were situations where that occurred, yes.
Would you agree that LMPD unlawfully stopped, searched, detained, and arrested people during street enforcement activities, including traffic and pedestrian stops?
Objection to form. You can answer if you know.
I'm sure that occurred on some occasions.
Would you agree that LMPD unlawfully discriminated against black people in its enforcement activities?
Objection to form. You can answer if you know.
I'm sure that happened in certain cases in individual circumstances, yes.
Would you agree that LMPD violated the rights of people engaged in protected speech critical of policing?
Objection to form, you can answer if you know.
It would not surprise me if that occurred.
Did you know of specific incidents of that occurring?
I do not.
Would you agree that Louisville Metro and LMPD discriminated against people with behavioral health disabilities when responding to them in crisis?
Objection to form, you can answer if you know.
I'm sure there were situations where that occurred.
Would you agree that the failures in leadership and accountability have allowed unlawful conduct to continue unchecked at LMPD?
Objection to form, you can answer.
That could have occurred.
The mayor appoints the LMPD chief, correct?
Correct.
You were the chief from 2012 to 2020.
Correct.
Would you agree that Louisville Metro and LMPD engaged in a pattern or practice of conduct that derived people of their rights under the Constitution and federal law?
Objection to form, you can answer if you can.
I don't know that, but it's, again, in the report, and I don't think the Department of Justice would have included it if they did not have sufficient evidence to make that statement.
Okay. Is that, this may cut off all of the rest of the questioning regarding to the report. Would you defer to the report for their findings and for the specific instances of conduct that they found?
Objection to form, you can answer.
Yes, sir. The Department of Justice knows what they're doing, and I don't doubt their findings.
Okay. Then I am going to save us the probably 2 hours of going through all of the rest of that.